Hello. Welcome to this week's episode of Creating the Vision. I have a fantastic and awesome guest today. I am so excited to have him introduce himself. But first, I just want to say how we met because we met through a thought leader group. Then we were broken up into groups of four. Three survived, three made it. Me, Graham, and Beth. And so we transitioned over to Voxer and we would keep each other motivated and inspired throughout the TEDx process. You guys are making me look bad because two of you have done your TEDx's and I am still in that process, but it is on my list for 2024. It is my do the dang goal for 2024. But Graham Cochrane, I am so excited to have you on the podcast today. You are a seven-figure entrepreneur, a TEDx and a keynote speaker, best-selling author, and host of The Graham Cochrane Show, a top 5 ranked podcast globally. That is freaking fantastic. You are the epitome of hashtag goals for me when it comes to podcasting. So I am really pumped. You have over 14 years of online coaching and content experience, 700,000 YouTube subscribers across your channel, and he has built multiple seven-figure businesses that require less than 5 hours of work per week to run. Graham, you are the leading voice and coach in the life-giving business movement. And I know that's what your TEDx talk was about. We're going to touch on that today. But more so, just thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. And I want to punt it over to you to tell us a little bit more about who you are and what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this. I know you got to connect with Beth already, and y'all got to meet and do your show in person, which is super cool.
Yeah.
Even though we both live in Florida, so it's kind of
I
wild that
know.
you had to do it over Riverside. And you are going to do a TEDx talk in 2024. It's not like
I
you've been
am.
sitting around all year 2023. You've just been doing your life and doing incredible things. So you're a very accomplished and busy woman in the best sense of the word. So I have no doubt in my mind, if I did it, you're going to do it. So I'm excited for you, and I can't wait to support your talk. And it's been great to be in a little cohort with you. I will say, sort of a little point here is everyone needs a group, and I'm a part of lots of different groups, but a group doesn't have to also be a big mastermind or a big community, or it can be 3 people on a Voxer channel or a text thread. And, you know, we're a good example of we kept up with each other weekly at first when we were a part of Thought Leader, and that was what we're supposed to do. And then it kind of dropped down to every couple of weeks, then every month. And then it's just sort of checking in, and there's just power in that accountability and celebrating each other's successes. So I would encourage everyone to grab a friend or two and start something to keep you guys accountable for your goals, which is awesome. I like to tell people, like, a big thing for me is I've struggled to know, who am I? That's one of the questions I've always wanted to answer. And I remember, Maria, I had this little office I was a part of for this little company I was working for. It was 2009. I was working at a credit card debt settlement company, not my dream job. It was just what paid the bills to get us to Florida. And I remember getting the phone call from my boss, who I knew personally because I was like employee number 2 that was hired. He was remote, but getting the phone call saying, hey, we're running out of money. They were a startup. We're out of money. We're going to have to let you go. We're going to have to shut the whole thing down. And I remember feeling like both a sense of relief, like I hated this job anyway, but also thinking to myself, like, what am I going to do? I just moved 1,000 miles away. We moved to Tampa. I just bought my first house. I just had my first baby. I'm 26 years old. And now I have no job and a wife and a baby and a mortgage. And I don't know anybody in this town. And I'm 4 years out of college, and I'm going backwards. I've lost 2 jobs in 1 year. This was a global recession, but it doesn't feel good whenever you're losing a job. And I think back to like what my dream was as a kid was to be a rock star. And I had worked really hard at trying to write the songs, make the record, work with a producer, shop an album to labels. And that dream had died. And I meandered for a couple of years. I thought I'd be a pastor. And then I end up in this space selling credit card debt settlement services, and then losing that job. And I like many people, the plans that I had didn't end up going the way I thought. And I kept asking myself, who the heck am I? And what am I meant to do with my life? And that question haunted me. Sometimes it still haunts me, but that's where I found myself at 26. We were on food stamps for 18 months as I tried to find a way to make a living online, which is where I kind of began to play with a business. And I started with the only skill I had, which was audio engineering. At the time, I had recorded music for bands and had done music for myself. And I was like, well, I know how to record music for other people and myself. I'll just start with that skill, which I always think is a great way to start. Start with what you know to do to get something happening. And it became a process of turning what little skill I had into money, turning that into a YouTube channel and a blog, and realizing I'm really good at teaching. I never thought I'd be a teacher, but I ended up creating content. And people were like, wow, the way you explain this complex art form of recording is really easy for me to understand. And I realized I'm good at explaining complex topics that I know a lot about in simple terms, transitioned that into a business that just took off. And then years later, I started a second business, taking the complexity of business and teaching people how to make money online very simply. And I've been doing that for 7 to 8 years. And so it's just been this wild ride of figuring out who the heck am I? And I'm a lot of different things. I'm a lot of different things, but that's sort of the journey of life. And we can get into it a little bit of like, it was a moment of desperation and like, man, I feel like I'm moving backwards. This is not what I wanted. But I was able to tap into the fact that there's so many elements to my personality and interests I have and skills I have that can work together to make some sense in my life and actually to become fulfilled in my life. And I like to say that I think what I've discovered is that the secret to fulfillment, to satisfaction, to success, to service to others is to do it your way, to do things your way. And that involves having to figure out who am I and what is my way? It's so
Mm-hmm.
easy to copy everybody else, but what does Graham believe about himself and the way he wants to show up in the world? And can I do a life and a career and a family that way?
Mm-hmm. There's so much that you share that resonates with me. And I know we've talked about this because I think, and I always look at this way too. And I think it's interesting that you, me, and Beth ended up in a cohort together in a little group because we are all similarly spiritually aligned and have a strong faith and a strong faith base. And that happened for a reason. I'm very grounded in that, wow, you two were put in my life for a specific reason. And not only do we help each other, inspire each other, and all of that, but I think there's some things too that when we first started connecting, and you were talking a lot about your journey, and gosh, listening to your TEDx talk, and guys, you have to go check out Graham's TEDx talk. We will link it in the show notes, all of that. But still, it's a fascinating story. You talk about this, and one thing we talked about, before in our process of preparing for this interview was how getting to know yourself and how, I mean, I found myself a mom of two, uprooted my family for a job promotion. And I just kept putting one foot in front of the other and thinking, okay, this has got to be the right direction, right? Because there's forward movement. We're progressing. I got promoted. I moved us to Atlanta. So this is great. But when I had this moment where I realized everything about my life was wrapped up in my self-worth, my value
Mm,
even my family, my value to how I outwardly perceived my contribution to the world was not me being me and me being unique. It was what I could do for the company that I worked for.
mm,
And I take full responsibility for that. Yeah,
sure.
I allowed myself to get wrapped up in that. I allowed myself to become that person. And so when I started developing out my own process and program of how am I going to get to know me,
Mm,
I feel like I knew myself before I took this role. And now I feel like I've gotten so far away from that. And I don't even know who the person is that I'm staring back in the mirror at. And so you bring up such a fantastic point that I wish it's like sometimes you wish you could go back and shake yourself and
yep.
you could look back into time and just be like, know who you are and stay grounded and rooted in that. What are my core values? What are the things that I stand for so that when I show up in any aspect of my life, it's not that I'm showing up for that person, I'm showing up who I am.
Yeah.
And they can either accept that version of me or not.
Yep.
But here I am and I'm showing up in that way. And as you were making some of those life transitions, talk a little bit about kind of some of the things that you discovered along the way. Because I know as you were kind of creating this vision, things did kind of take off for you in that way. So as much as you shaped, or I guess that things were happening to you. I mean, the food stamps, all of that. And let's also, I don't want to be remiss in that there's so much beauty in asking for help in that way
Yep.
and not being not, I mean, I'm sure there's a myriad of emotions, but at the same time, it's like you need the help. You have a family to support, and we will do anything for our families to make sure that we can provide for them and their happiness, et cetera. But as you're kind of coming out of that, talk a little bit about how what creating that vision then became. How did it change and shift for you to where you are now?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you're saying, and I will say, like, briefly, the food stamps thing was a really hard thing for me. Like, my wife was the one that brought that to my attention. She had a friend whose husband had lost his job. He was in construction, so you can imagine 2008, 2009, that industry collapses. And she was like, "Shay, we're making like $500 a month on food stamps from the government," and like that was a big deal back then. And so my wife brought it to me, and I actually refused to apply for food stamps because I was just like, I have a college degree. I've worked since I've been 14. Like, that's just not the kind of people we are, which is a very offensive thing to say, but I'm being very transparent. That's how I felt in that moment.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then my wife, she came back 2 weeks later, kind of thing, like, I really think we should do this. And it was like, I had to admit I needed the help, and there was nothing wrong with needing the help. And so that was a very helpful period of my life, because no one is self-made. Everybody needs help.
Mhm.
And I got help from not just the government, my younger brother, my brothers-in-law, my sister-in-law. They sent us money. They would just send us checks. They would send us gift cards. I mean, it's a humiliating, but at the same time, uplifting experience. Like, wow, when you ask for help, people want to help you. Maybe not everybody, but there's people that want to help you, and having the humility to say you need help, that was instructive for me. I'm kind of a lone wolf, so I think I needed that. I think that was part of God's story for my life. I will say that the reason anything I've ever done has had success is God's just put his hand on it. I mean, there's no other explanation. I work hard and I use my intellect, but the story God has written has just been one of, do I trust, and this is something I really believe in, do I trust that I can step into the things that excite me and that seem to align with who I am, and trust that God has a purpose for those things? Because here's one of the things I believe is that you have to live in alignment with the way you're designed. It's really interesting. We all know in one way that we're all uniquely designed. We can see personality tests, we can see people are different, but we don't live like that. We live like we should be like everybody else. And
Mm,
there's this thing I talk
so
about.
true.
Yeah, there's this thing I talk about in the book Rebel, which is the two-way mirror of meaning. So, like a two-way mirror at a police office or station, right? And so, like, I'm in one room and I'm looking through the glass and I can see the person on the desk being interrogated. I see through it on my side, but to them, right, it's mirrored glass on their side. So it's a two-way mirror. We all know what that is. This is how I think we look at life. We are on the glass side, and we're looking for validation. Whether it is, I have this job opportunity, or I want to make this pivot in my life, or I want to marry this person, or I want to pick up and become a missionary and move, whatever the thing is you're thinking about doing, we're usually 99% of us a little insecure about it, a little nervous, and we just want to make sure it's the right thing. And so we look for outside validation. So we look at the world through the glass part. And so when we're looking, we think we're looking at ourselves, like, is this for me? But we're really seeing through and seeing other people's lives on the other side. And so we're basically comparing ourselves to other people's lives. And then we see those people and go, well, they're not doing what I'm doing. Well, that's interesting. And then we ask them, hey, do you think I should be doing this thing? What do you think about this opportunity? And they look back at us and they're seeing the mirrored side. They only see themselves, because we can generally only see ourselves. And we're like, well, I think you should do what I'm doing. Well, that doesn't make sense. Why would I want to be a missionary? Why would I want to, like, have kids at that age? Why would I want to take that promotion? Why would I want to move to Wisconsin? Like, they'll just say
Yes.
whatever, because that's what they see. And
Right.
this is the problem, is that this is the weird echo chamber we live in,
This
where,
is so
does
true.
it make sense? Like, this is
Yes.
how we make decisions. And it's so unhelpful.
Yes. It's so true. It is absolutely so true. I think about that. And there's a quote, I think, where it says, like, why would you ask advice from someone who's never been in your position, or never been in, like, or never faced the types of decisions that you are up against, unless someone has absolutely mirrored your life. Why are you asking them for those kinds of advice and opinion? But I love the visual analogy you give to it, because I'm huge on visuals. And you're so right. We do seek that validation. I think, especially as young people, as youth, I work with a lot of collegians, and my message always to them is, hey, it's great if you know what you want to do right now, and you have that you just have that anchor, and that's awesome. That is fantastic. But if you don't, that's okay too. Like, it's okay to still be figuring it out. It's why I don't like these lists of like 30 under 30 and 40 under 40, and
Oh
like
gosh, yeah,
it just puts so much pressure on us to achieve certain things, and then that becomes the barometer by which we measure our own level of success,
yeah,
our own level of validation, because we're like, well, gosh, like, I mean, look at these people. Like, I'm never going to get there. I mean,
yeah.
they could have 100 under 100, and wouldn't make that list. So,
Yeah, that's depressing if you think about it. Yeah,
right, right. Which, with the advancements in science, we'll probably get there one day.
yeah,
There'll probably
probably.
be a 100 under 100. But no, you touch on something so important. And I think even talking about goals or goal setting, or your life path or journey, we have to know who we are and not to seek it from anyone else. That validation, it does feel good sometimes to feel validated.
Yeah,
And the first person to say, when someone says like, oh my gosh, I love what you're doing, or keep
yep,
going, I'm like, oh, right, yes,
yep,
like, I got one person
yep,
that's paying attention. But I think we have to separate that kind of like recognition and reinforcement from an actual like validation. And I think that's the difference that sometimes we miss, because the validation is like, no, I need you to tell me that
yeah,
I am good. And
yeah.
we need to know that we're good just by being who we are.
Well, I mean, gosh, that's so huge. And think about this, right? Like anytime you're about to make a big decision in your life, or a change or a pivot, or embark on a journey, like people, no one, virtually no one, I'm sure there's somebody, but virtually no one's going to be able to validate it, because they only know you as who you are or what you've previously done. They cannot see, you can't even see the way the future is going to unfold. You might have the vision of what you hope it will be and the reason why you're going to take this journey. Like I've pivoted in my business journey, for example. Let's speak in specifics. I was in the music space for this first business for years, and then I've like had success, and people were asking me about, how did you start the business? What's the business model? I don't care about what you teach in the music side, but I want to build a business like yours. And I ended up coaching people for free. And then I realized I want to help people build these kind of businesses because it set my family free. And when I started to move in that direction, people are like, no, 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 you're the music guy. You're the music YouTuber guy. That's what you are. And I was like, of course they're not going to be able to see this. I can't even see this new version of me. It's not even a new version of me. It's just the next thing that
Yes.
I'm walking into. But you're never going to get the validation from people, and it's not because they're mean, and it's not because they don't actually believe in you. It's just because they cannot see what you haven't created yet. And that's why it's like so important that you have a small group of people that know you and will support you and won't judge your ideas based off of them not understanding why you're doing it, or like, because nobody really knows. You do need somebody to confide in, to support you for accountability, or to say, look, I'm going to go try this thing because I feel led to do it. I don't know if it's going to work out, but will you support me in it? Or are there any red flags you're seeing? Because they're not going to judge the thing straight on. They're going to know that you're going to embark in new things, but they at least know your heart, and they can share some thoughts and some counsel, but you don't feel offended. Like, you need people that you trust, so you don't want to be a lone wolf completely and just say, I'm going to do whatever I want to do. That's not the point. But the point is when you share your dream with people, be very careful, because, and it might not even be a dream. It might be a wing and a prayer. They will crush it. They'll step on it, and they won't realize they're stepping on it, because they just say, I don't see you as that. I see you as the thing you've done for years, or the way you've been. And this will happen in big ways if you're pivoting your career, and it'll happen in micro ways. For example, people listen to your podcast, people doing personal development and growing. We're not the same person we were 12 months ago if we're doing any amount of growing. If you just read a book, like, you're going to be different. And so people don't like that, because they know who you are. And that's sometimes why relationships are hard, because one person in the relationship is growing and the other one isn't. It doesn't mean they're not supposed to be together, but it means like, wow, you're at a different place than you were. And so I maybe either have to rise to where you are, or I have to just accept, like, you're changing, I'm changing. Maybe I need to grow too. But we all want everyone to stay the same, be the way they were. It's the same reason why bands can't change their sound after their first couple of albums. It's like, well, that's not the way you sound. Why did you go electronic? Or why did you do this? Or we just hate it when people get outside of the box that we know that they're in. And
Yes.
you said a really good point of like, you have to be so confident in yourself of like, hey, I'm going to go do this thing. because I feel like I need to go do this thing, and I have to accept that not everyone's going to be excited about it. And if they are, that feels so good. I'm a people pleaser at heart, and I've worked really hard to not be a people pleaser, but it feels so good when somebody validates you, because that's the way we are designed as humans. But
Yeah.
sometimes you got to go do the hard thing
Okay.
and see if it works out.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I'm a recovering people pleaser. I'm in recovery.
Yes.
I like
Oh,
to
I
say
think
it.
I'll always be in recovery.
Yeah, well, that's what I say. It's like, I mean, not to denigrate addiction at all, but I mean, I really think that's like a piece of me that I'm almost like addicted to pleasing people, and so that's why I say like I will always be in recovery, because it is my default setting is to just say, sure, yes.
Yeah.
How can I help you? How can I help you? And then I have to take a step back and be like, but is this really working for me? And is this something that's going to fuel me, or is it something that's going to deplete me?
Yep.
And I've started to really look at things in that way. Yeah, on projects and people, clients, you name it, anything that I kind of give my energy to at this point. Okay, so I want to dive a little bit deeper into the book, because you have this incredible book called Rebel: Find Yourself by Not Following the Crowd. And I want to talk about this from, well, so many different perspectives. Interestingly enough, I immediately think about my children,
Mm.
because I always think about what our parents used to say, like, be your own person, don't follow the crowd. If
Mm.
everyone else was jumping off the bridge, would you? It's like all of those things that our parents said to, hopefully make us make good choices and good decisions. And I love it because we just came off of you talking about really truly knowing yourself and listening to the people, or that small group of people. So when in writing this book and kind of creating even the vision for what this book was going to do, talk to us a little bit about where was your head? What is the message that you're really wanting to send to people who read this book?
Yeah. It's kind of my life. I have felt like a rebel my whole life. I've never done what people asked me to do. I wasn't trying to be rebellious. And this is something I have to make a distinction of in the book, because when people hear the word rebel, they might think of different things. But I don't define a rebel as someone who just breaks the law or is just running around like the movie Rebel Without a Cause. To me, it's not about getting away with something. To me, being a rebel is about giving the world your full, truest, most authentic self. That's the most rebellious thing you could do in this age, when we're all just conforming, because what we're doing is conforming.
Mm-hmm.
We conform in every way. We spend our money the same way everybody spends it. We run our families the way everybody's doing it. We pursue the same goals everyone's pursuing. We buy the same cars. We decorate our houses the same. I mean,
Right.
we conform in big ways. We conform in small ways. Sometimes we just do what our family's always done.
Doing a
That's
lot of
conform.
evaluation here right now, just off of that sentence. I'm like, check, check, check.
Check. Yep.
Yeah.
Right. And social media only amplifies what's already always been
Yeah.
there from human nature. And so I think the most rebellious thing you could do is figure out who you actually are and show up fully as you are, as a gift to the world, even if the world pushes back. Like, no, that's not what we do. That's not who you are. It's actually a gift to the world if you become yourself. And I think rebels know what they want. They have a sense of purpose. And I actually think people find that attractive when they see someone who knows what they want or chasing after. I think it's an attractive quality. And we want that for ourselves deep down inside. We know we're meant to live this way. So the message of the book is very, very simple. Like, you can't figure out what you should be doing in your life if you don't know who you are. So the whole thrust of the book is there's a 5-part framework. It conveniently spells out the word rebel to do the work. I'd say that the book is like a coaching session, the way I would coach somebody to figure out who you are, what makes you tick, undo some of the mental work we got to undo, some of the inner story audits we have to do, habits we have to look at. But a lot of it starts with, like, the first component of it, the first R in the rebel framework, is to resolve to dream again. Like, just a stake in the ground, like, I'm going to dream again. Like, whoa. And everyone's relationship with dreaming is so different. Like, some people love to dream. Some people, like me, had a dream. I dreamed to be a rock star, and that dream died. And I was bitter. I was so bitter that I resolved never to dream again. I was like, I'm just gonna, that was embarrassing. I told everyone in my world, I'm going to pursue music. It's going to happen. I don't know how famous I'll be. I can't, but I know I'm going to do this. And when it didn't happen, and I had to get a job because I was married young, and I was angry. I was angry at God. I was embarrassed. I was shameful. And so I had to interpret things in such that maybe dreaming is stupid and foolish. You don't get what you dream for. I'm just going to get a regular job and live a regular life. And I hit something that I talk about and I call it the identity crisis intersection. So I have a dream, and maybe you've had this. You have a dream, you pursue that dream, and the dream could be big. It could be small too. It could be like, I just want to, train for this marathon. That's a big deal for me. Or I just want to, start to like take weekends off. And that's like my dream because I work too much. Like it could be whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You pursue it, something doesn't go right, or it falls flat, or it's a real big mess up. And then you were like, well, what the heck? Who am I then? If that dream, I thought I wanted that thing, it didn't happen. And so it becomes this identity problem. Like, wow, who am I really? It's not just that the dream died. It's like a part of me died. And then you're at an intersection, you're at a fork in the road, and you can either go one way or the other way. And the two options that we typically choose are option A is to conform. We go right back to conformity. So if we had the guts to dream a little bit, and if that dream dies, we go, nope, we're going to go right back and swim with the crowd because it's safer in the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
That's the
Yep.
way humanity is, right?
Yep.
Or you could dream again. You could dream again. And maybe the dream died. My dream of being a rock star died. And so I buried dreaming for a long time, and I buried my desires. So a big part of the Dream Again framework in Rebel is like, what do you like? What do you want? What do you dream about? Big or small? What do you want to do, be, have? Like wants are not the goal, but they are a clue as to like the way you're designed, like what lights you up. And so I do a lot of work with people there about like, what are your dreams? But maybe my dream of being a rock star died, but new dreams have like come up for me. It took me a while to like be honest about them, but like, wow, I like being in front of people on the stage, on a podcast. I like communicating. I like it's a performance. Like being a public speaker is a performance. Being a podcaster in a way is a performance. You're creating a moment for people to hear or watch, and then it can be transformative. Maybe it wasn't music, and I've done other things with music too. So my music dream didn't actually die; it just morphed. But even my career and what I do for a living, I've tapped into other desires I have and fashioned new paths to make a living and make an impact and still feel the way I wanted to feel when I was on stage as a musician or as a theater kid before that. And it's like, maybe I could keep dreaming again. And even as I've pivoted, dream again, dream again. So for me, everything with being a rebel and figuring out who you are starts with, what do you dream about? And if you don't dream, because a lot of us, it was beat out of us for a lot of reasons, sometimes by our parents, like you shouldn't dream, you should just go be a lawyer. You should just go, like, everyone's story is different. And I get it. But when you were a kid, before it was beat out of you, because we all start out as dreamers, because the way God designed our brains is to create in our mind. That's why I love your work, Maria, is it starts in the mind. Like we had the most powerful tool in the world, which is our mind, that God gave us to create something first in our mind, and then we create it in reality. But that gets beat out of us. So like, what did you used to think about, dream about, want to create? Doesn't mean that's what you want to do. And you had shared on our Voxer channel about wanting to be into politics, like there was something there. That was a clue that there's something there for you about who you are. And maybe the dream isn't to actually go do that specific thing when you were a little kid, but you don't dismiss it because it is a clue. And the more clues we can get early on, the easier it is, to your point earlier of like, do I just say yes to every opportunity? Sure, I can do that. Sure, I can be here. Sure. We people please because we're not clear on our dreams and our values. And you mentioned values. I believe like another thing I talk about is a life purpose matrix, which is really about like getting the sweet spot of your dreams and your values. And if you don't know what your values are, that's a problem. If you know what your values are, but you don't know what you dream about, that's a problem too, because there's a lot of things I value, but they're not going to be fun to do certain tasks related to my values. So you really got to get that sweet spot of your values and your dreams. And most of us are just too dang busy to do that deep work and look at it. It's not actually hard, but you have to treat it like work. But once you do, life gets a lot more clear. You don't know the future, but you know, like, that's not for me. That's not for me. That sounds cool. Let's pursue that. And that just helps you navigate the world a little bit better.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. Everything you said, I 100% agree with. And there's so much that resonated with me just about going back to when you were talking about like goals that you gave up on, or that you kind of buried your goals for a while. I mean, that really resonated. I mean, I spent a big portion of my young life, competing to win scholarship money to, pay for my college education, which it did that. And, I was the same way. Like, I remember like telling people like, I'm going to be Miss America. Like, I'm going to be Miss America. Like, this is what I want. And I was manifesting it, and I made the vision board for it, and I did the whole thing, and then I didn't win. And I'm like, oh, well, that's like, let me go crawl in my little hole here for a hot minute. And you're right. And there were so many other aspects to my growth and development as a person competing in, in that organization, and through that process that I have carried with me through. And what I have found is that that wasn't my path. Like I see now, looking back, like it would have been a different life for me. Not necessarily better, it just would have been different.
Yeah.
And I can accept that now, and accept that, but you know what? Like I have a really amazing life now. I also think that about my corporate career, and I would say that probably when I buried that dream after Miss America, I was a little lost.
Mm.
And so I finished out my year as Miss Kentucky. I got married. We dated for 5.5 years before we got married. So we kind of knew we wanted kids, and we
Yep.
wanted them young so that we could be there, And so we were the same way. It was 25, 27. I had 2 kids, and I'm like, what in the world's going on with my life?
Yeah.
I feel like I used to be so sure of myself, and now I have no
Mm.
clue. And I was kind of thrust into this corporate environment thinking, to your point, I saw the opportunities within a corporate setting to lead a team, to motivate people, to empower them, to give presentations, which is that form. I'm same thing, theater kid, vocal major. I went to an art school and all the way through high school, and I have always felt in some form or fashion that that would be a life that I would live or have. And so I think it's interesting that it's just turned out in a lot of different ways. It's
Mm.
not how I probably imagined or envisioned it when I was younger, but now that I am living my most, authentic life, and have really stepped into who I am as a person, I can now look back and see all of those things that I was doing along the way were preparing me for this moment. I couldn't see it then. I knew there was something there. I couldn't visualize it crystal clear. But then, to your point, I did the work. So that is also something that we do not do. And what you touched on and what you said is so true. We do not take the I think the reason that our dreams die when we're younger is because we as adults aren't facilitating them in children. We're not continuing that work. We
Mm.
allow them because we know kids are dreamers. We know they love. I mean, I just look at my kids, and I know how excited they get to decorate for holidays, how excited they are for this time of year,
Yep.
because we're still in the holiday season. And so I don't know, I just, not to digress, but I look at that, and I think that like childlike
Mm.
approach to things is something that we, around like third, fourth grade, we stop facilitating that. And it's almost like, okay, well, now it's time for you to just, start being a kid, and like, a general kid, not the dreamer kid, not the one who continues that. And we don't do the work. To your point, we're not given the opportunity to do that work. My work with corporations, what I try to stress to them is they need to be the facilitator of this work.
Mm.
It behooves them to do this work with their employees, because then they get more engaged employees. They get people who want to be there. They also might find people that don't want to be there. And that's okay too. Because if I'm running a company and a business at that large of a scale, if I've got someone who doesn't want to be there and doesn't want to put in the work every day to show up and bring that piece of them to the business, okay, then maybe it's best that we both cut our losses, and they
Yep.
can go find what's meant for them, and I can find a person who's meant for me, or for my organization. So it's a win-win situation in every aspect of our life. And then I feel it's the breakdown of so many things, to
Yeah.
your, kind of what we talked about, is when you can, yeah, feel yourself creatively, then you get to the root of what's truly in your soul and what you were meant for.
Well, yeah, and that's the way, the world won't be better if we're all the same. Like it just really won't.
Mm-hmm.
And the analogy I think of is in my kitchen, in my pantry, actually, I have two devices next to each other. I have an espresso machine and I have a blender, like a Ninja blender. And I think about it as if like in the espresso machine, it's great, right? You got beans at the top, and then it can automatically grind the beans, make a single cup of coffee. So I know it's fresh, but I don't have to do any work with like a traditional espresso machine. I don't want to work. I want the convenience of the automated, but I want the fresh ground beans. And it does a great job of that. But it would be as if my espresso machine thought, man, look at that Ninja blender. I want to make smoothies. And we're the same. Like, why not? We both have like a top where you put food in at the top. We both have a blade that spins around. Like, I could make a smoothie. And it's like, no, espresso machine, you'd make a horrible smoothie, not because you suck, but
Right.
you were designed to make a freaking espresso. So the comparison isn't helpful. And and if we did the same thing, we just have lots of smoothies. We wouldn't have espresso. I need someone to make a coffee.
Mhm.
So there's something freeing about not trying to be better than your competition or better than the person in your field or even better than yourself. I know like you can compete with yourself. It's really not about being better than so that you stand out. It's like being different, like just be different. And that's not hard if you know who you are, because you are by default different than somebody else. And it's like embracing that uniqueness. I tell people they need to uncover their uniqueness because you have one. And then you need to leverage that thing. You need to unleash that thing because it's going to set you free. Because then you don't have to even worry about, well, I'm not as good as him or her, but you are 100% you. And if you're confidently you and you're like, hey, I don't do these things over here, but I do this. And I feel that way. Like in a practical example, I help business owners, right? I've I can help you make a lot more money in your business, but I'm not going to like press into like being this general business coach for people, for all businesses. If you've got a huge team and you're doing like a drop shipping or you've got a physical product, or I can help you in certain areas. I can understand marketing and understand some of that stuff. But you know what I'm really good at? I'm really good at helping people not only scale their business though, but work less. Like I'm good at systems and like getting to the heart of what makes your business run so that you design a life and a business you love. So I press into that uniqueness of like I will talk about how much money my business will make and how few hours I work because it's a distinction. Everyone else is working a lot of hours and they're proud of it. I'm proud of how few hours I work to make the same amount of money.
Mhm.
And that's a turnoff for some people. I literally found that some people think I'm literally lazy. They don't understand it and they won't listen to me or respect me because I work so few hours. But the right person's like, okay, Graham's doing something that I'm very interested in. I want to still be able to like have a life, take my kids to school, take vacations, take a mental health day or week or month, like, and the business still runs. Like, what is he doing? And I want some of that. So I press into that uniqueness, but I can't scale you to 9 figures. I've never done that, but I can get you up to 7 figures and work 5 to 10 hours a week. And so I'll press into that as a uniqueness, for example, in that brand. But I just think it's so much more freeing. And I struggle. I have friends that I have so much comparison to, like, man, you're so cool. The way you show up in the world and what you're doing, like, I wish I could be you. And then I realized, but I'm not you. And what's the point of that? And they probably wish they could be me in some ways. But it's so freeing to figure out who you are. Because then, to your point, I was really thinking about this when you were talking, Maria, about your dream of being Miss America. It almost, I almost used to judge people for not like pursuing their dreams when I was like younger. Before my first dream died, I was like, I'm going to be the guy that actually becomes the famous rock star. Like if I were you, I'm actually going to be the girl that actually becomes Miss America. I'm not going to talk about it,
Right.
I'm actually going to do it. I think you were that
Right.
same kind of person. And so I think I judged other people like, you're going to just pursue a career in finance because you gave up your music dream and you think that's realistic. Not me, not Graham. I'm going to go for it. And then of course my dream got crushed and I was like, oh crap, am I not good enough? And but now it's like when you were talking, I think I just had a moment for myself of like, wow, the dream isn't the goal. The dream again, and I know this, the dream is a clue. I'll believe that. But like I had a distinction just when you were speaking. The dream isn't the goal. It's wonderful to pursue the dream and make the dream. But the dream is a clue. And the goal is to figure out who the heck you are and what all those things, what lights you up, what doesn't, what you value, what you don't, so that you can pursue lots of different dreams and like enjoy your life the whole way. Like, isn't the purpose of life to just operate the way God designed you in the world and enjoy all of it? I think the whole book of Ecclesiastes in the Bible is like just enjoy all the things I gave you and fully show up as who you are. That's like the principle of the book there. And it's like, man, maybe my dreams I was putting too much emphasis on when I was younger. Like the point is to achieve the dream. I think the point is to walk in authenticity of who you are and give the world your full self, and the dreams pull you in that direction. So it almost doesn't matter if the dream happens or not, because you're already winning if you're like, this is what I care about. And so when I tell people now, and we met a year ago with Thought Leader, I joined that group because I was like, I want to be a public speaker and I'm going to start by giving a TED talk. So that made sense to me.
Yeah.
And so I was telling people as far back as a year and a half ago, like, I'm moving into public speaking. I'm moving into public speaking. And part of my fears crept up again. Like, oh, Graham, Is this that same thing that happened when you were in your teens and early 20s where you told people you're going to be a rock star? You told them, and then it didn't happen. How embarrassing is it going to feel if it doesn't quite happen? But I have a lot more of a healthy relationship with myself now, where this time around, it's like, no, this is a dream I have because I want to show up in the world in this way and do this kind of work because I think it'd be fun. And like, however it looks, I don't know how it's going to look. How could I know how it's going to look? But I'm going to go do this thing and say, this is what I believe in because it's really true. And I'm not holding myself to a very specific, like, I have to keynote these number of times a year at this price.
Yeah.
Like, I like goals to get me somewhere, but that's not the purpose. Does that make sense? Like, it's
Yeah,
just,
absolutely. I always tell people it's the journey. The goal's the destination. It's the journey. It's everything along the way that you're building. And I think that you also gave me some perspective on my life when we had that Voxer conversation around my work. I've since been to DC. That's how I was able to connect with Beth, and did work with the US House of Representatives. And that was a direct result of just some of the connections that I had made in politics. I wanted to be, or at least I thought I wanted to be in politics to help people. And now I'm helping them in just a different way.
yeah,
So I'm still involved and I'm still very aligned with that because, I mean, I do enjoy politics. I don't enjoy what it does to people sometimes, but I enjoy democracy, and
yep.
I think DC is a fascinating place. So I think it just presents itself in a different way. And I know you had pointed that out, like, hey, you know what? Maybe your path isn't to be a US senator anymore, but it's to work with these people and to help them and impact and impart you know, what you were designed to do on them.
Yeah.
So this whole time it's been leading you in that direction, just in a different format, in a different way,
It's
which is so
exciting.
cool.
Isn't it cool?
Yeah.
It's exciting when you think about life that way, the
Yeah.
possibilities. I'm a planner. And so this is coming from a futurist on the strength finders and a planner. I actually am finding more joy and freedom in like not living by the plan, but
Hmm.
living more into this is who I am. This is what I value. These are things that are important to me, and I want to be of service anywhere I can be. And like seeing what the adventure of life looks like, of like where will God take me next year? Where will it be the year after that? But fully showing up as myself in all of those corners.
I love that because you actually just led right into my last question, which is, I ask all my guests, what is their do the dang goal? So what is on the horizon? What is that goal that Graham is like, I'm doing the dang thing. I'm making it happen. I already professed that mine was TEDx. So I'm going to join you and Beth. That is my do the dang goal for 2024. I have it plastered everywhere. It's on about 18 different post-it notes across between my bathroom, my bedroom, my computer screen. So what is
I
your do
love
the dang
that.
goal?
Yeah. So for me, this next year will be to, I don't have a specific number, but I want to start fully keynoting. Like I've been writing 2 talks, one around the book Rebel, which comes out in 2024. And so one's about that and one's specifically in helping business owners. And so I've been writing these new talks around the same content. And it's like to keynote on stages and give these talks and just become world class at it. So that's probably my goal because I'm launching the book. That's the big thing that has to happen in 2024, which will be fun. But do the dang goal is launch the book and keynote a bunch this year.
Well, I cannot wait to read the book. I cannot wait to promote the book, to share the book, to buy it as a gift for friends because I love buying books for my friends and sharing that with them. And a part of my coaching process too is I always try to share a resource.
Love
And
that.
I think your book is going to be one that is going to be a top resource of mine to provide to people because you truly are providing them a roadmap to leading their life in their own way and not in a way that is guided or driven by society or by what anyone else thinks that they should do. And I know that we could talk for like another 2 hours on this topic, but I'm just so grateful and thankful that you took time out of your schedule to chat with me. So I want to know, okay, besides the book, besides the TEDx, which we're going to link because every single person needs to watch this TEDx, where can listeners find you?
Yep. A bunch of resources at grahamcochrane.com or the podcast, anywhere you listen to podcasts, The Graham Cochrane Show. And the only place I really interact online would be Instagram at The Graham
Okay.
Cochrane.
All right. Yay. Well, we will get all of those in the show notes. We'll get everything linked, the book, the TEDx talk, everything. So, Graham Cochrane, you are just a gem of a human. And I am so excited that our paths in this life collided. And I'm so grateful for you and Beth. And I'm also fortunate that I got to interview you both or have this conversation with you both. And I'm excited for everyone to listen to all of the goodness that both you and her provide. And just keep doing great things. Keep being you.
Thanks, Maria. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Thanks.